Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Lutheran schools and their leadership. This podcast is hosted by two Lutheran school leaders. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the superintendent of Lutheran Neighborhood Schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And my name is Mike Sheeman. I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. And today, Rob and I are going to talk a little bit about a kind of complicated topic, I would say, diving right into teacher prep time. Now, there's a lot of spider webs, I think, that could come out of this one. We could talk about scheduling. We could talk about various class offerings. What do you do as a Lutheran school? But we want to take a minute just to focus a little bit on what teachers need in order to effectively do their job, and how can you as an administrator manage some of that when it comes to providing prep time for your staff. So I envision that people who are listening have had this conversation from a couple of different chairs. Either you're a teacher that has gone to your administrator and said, I need prep time to effectively do my job, which is absolutely true. Or you're an administrator that's pulling out your hair saying, how do I give my staff prep time without me being the solution to go in and teach when I have a million other things to do? So hopefully today, Rob and I will have a discussion that spurs on some thoughts or leads you to some questions that maybe we can even help help you to answer a little bit.
Yeah, the teaching day is really unlike any other profession because it's very supervision based, right? And so if you work in a factory, hey, I get my 15-minute break and then my 30-minute break or whatever it is, and they'll just shut down your line at that time, right? Because everyone on your line's taking the same break. Or if you work in an office, you'll just log out of your computer for that minute, right? You work in a restaurant, your section just maybe somebody else steps in for that moment, but they'll cover other sections, right? The teaching day is very different. It's a lot harder to say, hey, I'm going to go take 15. Who's going to watch your kids? Can you take them with you, right? All of those things go through our heads as administrators, and how do we get that covered? And that's what we're going to talk about today is what does that look like? What's the average across our school system? How do you get those scheduled? How do you get those covered? What do you do if somebody maybe doesn't like the time you have? We're going to talk about all of that today, get a little bit into the nitty-gritty. Mike is right. We're going to turn over some rocks, and I don't know what's going to be under them for some of the administrators listening. Scheduling in general, whether that's scheduling the day, the calendar, these are my least favorite bits of teaching in school operations in general because we spend so much time moving around all the pieces on the schedule. And then you show them to one other person, literally a single other person, and they go, well, I don't like this. And you've just put your heart and soul into it. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, what is your suggestion? And you try to say that without getting upset. Mike, you've been there. I've been there. I'm sure the people listening who've made a schedule has been there. So Mike, let's start with you. How do you guys schedule prep time at your school?
That's a good question. So it is a complex puzzle, and I am not the puzzle master here. I struggle to put schedules together. It drives me nuts. But every year you'd think, oh, we accomplished it last year. We can do it this year. But what I've done in a couple of places is I can almost guarantee you've got somebody on staff who is a master at this. And maybe it's an Excel sheet, maybe it's sticky notes on the wall, whatever it is, but their brain works that way. My brain just doesn't always work that way. And they can see 18 dominoes down the road to say, if I schedule fifth grade Spanish at this time, that's going to impact PE, music, art, and drama over here, and let alone third grade language. And I'm just like, hey, you go. I have no idea what you're talking about. But in the end, it's something that works out. What I like to do this collaboratively, Rob, where I can say, let's bring a few teachers in and come up with a skeleton schedule. And I usually try to bring in teachers from different age groups so that everybody is represented. I think to do the schedule as a whole staff is way too much. I've been there, and sometimes those scheduling meetings turn a little bit crazy because people start to advocate, I want this and I want this. Well, you can't have that, or I can't get you that. And I even had one where emotions went high, and it's like, we're taking a break. Now, as the administrator, you have every right to do the schedule and walk into a staff meeting and say, here it is. Here's your schedule for next year. It's done. But you also know your staff. Would your staff appreciate that? Some might. Would your staff say, I wish I could have spoken into that? So the staff I work with, that's their MO. I would like to speak into it. So I start with a group of about 3 people. We do a schedule, and where all the chips fall, show us where the prep times are. And then we take a look and say, does that really work? Do we think this is going to be a good thing? And sometimes it means clicking the delete key on the keyboard and starting over. Other times it's like, well, we can just make a few tweaks. After that's made, then we take it to the larger group. And what I love about the teachers I work with is they're very gracious because sometimes they're going, well, that it isn't ideal, but I do know that the schedule changes year after year. And so this year, if that's what I have to do, then that's what I'm going to do. And I think the attitude and the mentality of people makes this either a total nightmare or a blessing and a success. Rob, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, you're right. It really depends on the people you have, and some people love scheduling. Some people are like, "Why can't it be the same every year?" And I have that same question. Why can't it be the same every year? Because I've tried to make it the same every year, and something always comes up. You either have a double of a certain grade, or maybe you have a new teacher, or maybe you have a new part-time person. It is never the same. And that drives me nuts because I would love to just dust one off the shelf and bring it in and be like, hey, we're done. We're finished. We can move on. And it never works out that way. But yes, you're right. Some people really want to be included, and especially at the lower grades, if you're self-contained, really, it's hard for me to make your schedule for you because you know your day so much better than I do. And so I would tell the self-contained teachers, hey, you come up with a rough draft that works for you. Here's some pieces that you have to work around. Here's when music is for everybody. Here's when recess is for everybody. Here's when lunch is. Like those are kind of the rocks we have to work around. And if you have somebody who wants to switch with you for one of those, that's fine with me. I'm totally okay with that. I'm not going to be like, no, you have to because I decided. I'm just some guy, right? I might be the principal, but I'm still just some guy. And so if you have a time that works for you, come tell me about it. Come share it with me. That always worked so much better. And I'd even let teachers kind of schedule recess together. I could come up with a recess schedule, but I know that that's not going to work for everybody. So why don't you guys all sit down together, talk about when you want recess and what works for you, who you want to be out there with, who maybe it doesn't work to be out there with, if there's somebody you can switch with, and don't get hung up on trying to keep the schedule the same every day. Now, this is an interesting thing in the Lutheran schools, at least I've been in. We try to keep the daily schedule as similar day to day as we can, and the weekly schedule for sure. Like one week looks exactly like the next week. Well, I've been in some independent schools, and it is not that way. They'll have like an 11-day rotation that they work through. And I'm just like, how do you keep track of all of it? And they're like, oh, this is just how it always is. We're totally used to this. No one bats an eye at it. And I'm like, I have people whose heads would literally explode if I told them we were going to work on an 11-day rotation and you need to keep track of whether it's a C day or an F day. People would be like, what are we doing? But they have no problem with it. So don't get hung up on the way you've always done it. Definitely be open to changing it and seeing if there's somebody in your building who has an idea and explore those a little bit. I'm not saying you have to run with it forever, but definitely give it some room because it is one of those things, as everything is with school, where there's always more room for improvement day to day or year to year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think also, Rob, when you're including people in it, it brings you closer to the teachers because the teachers are the ones, they're the ones that are in the classroom every day. They're the boots on the ground, and they're going to have some insights or some thoughts that an administrator may not be thinking of. And sometimes as administrators, we're that one step removed from the classroom. And as you continue on at administration year over year, not only are you one step removed, but then time is passing as well. So to really value your teachers and value your staff, it's important. I believe it's important to have them speak into that because they're going to bring perspectives and insights that you may not think of as an administrator, but things that you want to value, things that you want to share to be able to help them out. Now, I feel like we said we're going to talk about prep time. We're still at 35,000 feet because this is a hard plane to land because there's a lot of pre talk that needs to go in there. And we're going to get to prep time, but I think there's another facet here that we need to take a look at is when you're doing prep time, like Rob, you already said, some of the teachers are self contained. Absolutely true. So then how do you break that mold? Well, you're going to start bringing in specialists to do certain things because that's the easiest way by far to give prep time. So you hire an art teacher, you hire a music teacher, you hire a PE specialist, whatever it is that you're going to do. But that has implications now on your budget, and that has implications on your hiring and so many other things. So even though prep time is a very, small piece of a large pie, it is something that you need to take a look at and intentionally plan forward for. Now, to do that, I mean, it is a commitment on the school's level, but I would argue it's another commitment to your teachers. Again, you are blessing them with that because it is hard. Teaching today, it gets harder and harder as time goes on because there's so many expectations that are placed on teachers. And if they don't have that prep time, you're doing two things. You're running them ragged through the day, and they're going to be exhausted by Friday at 3:30. Um, but you're also starting to wear them out because the stuff that can't happen during the school day has to happen outside the school day. And so they're not only putting in their regular 7-hour school in front of kid time, but you're asking them to put in all that extra time outside of school. Now, I would argue as a teacher, that is an expectation. There's an expectation for work outside of school time. But if you can minimize that for the teachers or provide them release time within the day, you're really valuing them. You're valuing their families and saying, we're going to work with you to make sure that we can care for you to the highest level possible. Is it a commitment? Yes. Do you have to pay for that commitment? Yes. But the return on that commitment is going to be happy teachers who are going to be effective teachers in order to teach students and see growth. And that's what we're all about. That's what we're all about, sharing Jesus with these kids and watching them grow academically. So it's a well-rounded investment.
Yeah, let's talk about what that looks like. So last year, maybe a year and a half ago, a question was asked on Facebook. How often do your teachers get prep time? What does it look like? And I'm very data driven and I like to analyze things. And so I took it upon myself to take all of those answers, every single one that came in, and pop them into a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet covers what the enrollment of the school is, whether they're combined, whether they have specialist teachers, whether teachers cover lunch and recess, how long they get as a prep per day, how many days per week, if there's any additional time. And I threw all that together and looked for trends. And so this sample, at least through the Facebook thread that started, smallest school was 46 kids, largest school was 500 kids. And there's a lot in the middle. There's a ton in the middle. The average school size, there were 38 schools in this, 151 kids is the average. And there's some above and below that. The average amount of prep time for the Lutheran schools in this kind of weird sample I put together, 31.97 minutes over 3 days. So 3 days you get prep time. The average is 30 minutes-ish. And now for some of the schools listening, you go, I would love 30 minutes 3 days a week. And some of the schools are listening are like, I get like an hour a day. What do you mean 30 minutes 3 days a week? That's crazy. And the thing to realize is that everybody has their own way of doing it. There is no cookie cutter mold for how to operate a Lutheran school or how to schedule Lutheran school prep time. And Mike's right. It is a really important part of your day, and it is a way you can bless teachers if you can find a way to build it in. And so what are some of the ways that it gets built in according to the survey that I have? It's not a survey in the traditional sense, the survey of the data that I've been doing. People have specials like Mike talked about, shared lunch or recess. Hey, you'll take the first and second graders for lunch. I'll take the first and second graders for recess. We'll alternate. That way one of us gets a lunch off, one of us gets a recess off, right? There's doing that. Or maybe it's 3 or 4 teachers who are doing that. Hey, us 3 teachers will watch the kids. This 4th person will take this prep time, right? There's doing it that way. There is parent volunteers, having a parent come in and cover recess. There are some schools that will take 20 minutes in the morning where there's no classwork being done. They'll say, hey, from 9:30 to 9:50, this is break time for everybody. Kids can walk around and ask their teachers questions if they need to go room to room. So you still have kids supervision going on there, but it's not direct teaching and it's not covering recess. It's like, hey, think of it as a mini study hall. Certain schools were building into this reading time. Every kid must be reading a book at this time, which is its own kind of ball of wax to really supervise, right? What do you do with the kid that's not reading? How do you get them to read, right? There's still some teacher on time that is definitely happening there. And then even just some schools have realized they can't do it during the day. So they have messed with their schedule, modified their schedule to say, hey, every Monday we have an early dismissal so you guys can work on stuff without kids here. And it doesn't add in extra time. So lots of different ways that this can happen and lots of different interesting strategies here. Looking at like total minutes of prep time, there were some schools in the sample that had none. right? And then there were a couple schools in the sample that had 300 minutes per week. And so it really is all over the board. The most common answer I saw was between 40 and 60 minutes total. It usually spread over 2 days, where it's someone's covering my kids for recess, someone's covering something for art. And so that is one of the more traditional ways that gets done. Now, that all being said, this is just information. This is just what I saw in this tiny sample that I have. And there are 1,000 ways to do this. There really are. And so don't be afraid to hear this information and go, oh, I can do it better. Great. Or to hear this information and go, well, we could never do that. Well, work towards it. That's one of those things. I think we're all in agreement. There can never be enough prep time. Prep time is always an N+1, right? Like, I love what I have, but more would be better. It is that way for all of us, and we would love to give more if we could. But the reality is that sometimes we can't. And so why don't we talk about that? This is one of those rocks that we chipped over, and now we're going to talk about what kind of crawled out. So, Mike, how do you handle it when a teacher comes to you and says, this is just not enough time? What do you do?
Um, I try to dig down a little bit into the why. Why is this not enough time? What is on your plate that is difficult? Now, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, you have the same amount of time as everybody else. Tell me why. You got to filter on, and how do you say that properly? Um, and there could be a million reasons why. I mean, staff go through difficult things, and in their personal life too, and you don't know what is pushing them at that particular moment. It may be that they are coming to you and it is a true serious concern. Maybe they've got a difficult class, or they've got a lot of differentiation that needs to take place and they're struggling to juggle all the balls that are up in the air. There could be a lot of reasons why it is the way it is, but then there's also, I'm going to sound negative for a second. There's also really the fact that sometimes you just got a lazy teacher, and you have to say, there's really nothing I can do about that. What kind of support do you need? And I think continuing to bring the question back to them of how can I help you? How can I support you is a good way to do it. Um, Sometimes it is a matter of diving in and looking at their teaching practices. We have those perfectionist teachers as well that want to do absolutely everything. And I never want to say that the standard is set too high, but sometimes individuals set the standard too high for themselves. And so then as they try to meet that standard that they've set, which might even exceed the standards you've set as a school, it becomes something where you just got to look at, maybe looking at their practice a little bit. And I'm not trying to say that you lower standards. I love teachers that have high standards, but I've seen those teachers where it's like, you don't have to do these things because I don't require it from you as a school. And the answer sometimes is, well, I require it from myself. And it's hard to release them from that because that's just the way that some people are wired. Um, Other times when teachers come and say, I don't have enough prep time, um, it really is just an analysis because you can't wave a magic wand and fix that for them. I have done it before where, as an administrator, I can shift my time a little bit. And so maybe I can say to somebody, well, if this is a time that you're struggling, maybe I can teach 3 blocks for you over the next 2 weeks. And I can give you a little extra time to allow you to get caught up. Sometimes it is just the tyranny of the urgent or the pressure that builds up. I've also told my staff there are no gold medals for not using your personal days in a school year. I budget personal days. And if you're stressed and if you really don't have that time that you need, take a day. And the answer is usually, yeah, well, it's harder. Even I have to get ready for a sub. Yeah, you do. You do. But it's going to help you, I think, in the long run. Use your personal days. So I think if you don't have enough prep time, what other levers can you pull to kind of help them out? Now, I've tried to do it before in other years where I'll take on a class and say, well, I'm going to teach this math class for this staff member because I know they don't have enough prep time legitimately. But that's a commitment from me as the administrator. And some years it's been great. And other years it's like, man, I got to pull in people from all over the place to cover my class because I've got this going on. So, administrators, I would encourage you to take a look at your school size and see, should you be a teaching principal? Yes or no? You can answer that, and only you. Is this something that has your school grown to this to the size that you can afford to hire some specialist teachers, but you're scared to take that jump? Because there's almost like a threshold where you get to that point where it's like we're no longer a small school, but we're not a big school. But how do you take that next step? And that's contextually based. But yeah, when teachers come and say, I don't have enough time, it's like, I can sympathize with you. I can do my best to help you. What do you need? I like to turn it back on them. Rob, what do you think of that?
Yeah, those are all great answers. And I will do a lot of those same things, honestly. And I'll listen and I'll say, well, tell me about that. What can you not get done right now? Right? And how do you propose that we solve that? Here are the pieces we have. What's your suggestion for moving them around? Because a lot of the time it is just those are the cards you have. You can wish for a better hand, but you don't have one. That's just the reality of teaching some of the time. One of the phrases I'll use with teachers is sometimes we have to punt. It's like a football game. You don't love punting. You'd rather score a touchdown. You'd rather kick a field goal. But sometimes this is your best strategic play. And scheduling has a lot of those, more than other areas, I would say. Because the reality is that every school could use more people. Every school, every single school. There's not a single school out there that's like, oh, I think we have too many people. Even if you have a school, and I know of a couple like this, where they have like 30 kids and 8 teachers. And they'll go, well, it'd be great if we had one more, right? Because you get used to what you have. You do. And these teachers in the survey that have no prep time, you give them 10 minutes and they're the happiest people in the world. These schools where teachers have 300 minutes and you give them 5 less, they're maybe the most unhappy people that day. So it really is a lot of perspective and what you're used to and what you've kind of grown up with. And just to touch on the teaching principle bit, we had a lot of teaching principles in the Lutheran school system, and there are still a lot. But the job has so many more requirements now than it did before. It just does. There are more state programs. The class sizes are different. The reality of teaching is different. The parents are different. Everything is just a little different. When I was talking to somebody, they were the student. They had gone to the school. They were like, I think they're like 65 now, but they were talking to me about how they went to school at the school in second grade. And they're like, I went to second grade here. I'm like, great. Tell me about that. Well, there were 45 kids in the class with one teacher. And I'm like, what? I got what? And everyone loved it because in that era, that was totally fine. That was totally the norm. And now I think you get over like 20 kids, and some teachers like, well, that's way too many kids. And I don't know. Is 20 too many? Is 30 too many? I think we all have different answers to that. And it's the same with prep time. Everyone's got a different answer. And the key takeaway here is not that Mike and I have all the right answers and you should be doing everything we say. That is not it. We are two guys who every year struggle with the schedule and every year go, how are we going to get this figured out? And if you have a great idea, come talk to us. I would love to talk to you. If you say, hey, I know exactly how to do the schedule and this is exactly how I come up with prep time and this is fantastic. I want to talk to you because I want to learn from you. I want to know what your answer is because as with everything, we are working on it, but I don't think we've solved it by any means.
No, but if you want to make millions of dollars, solve it and then call me up and we'll be partners. Um, Actually, Rob, I am curious if anybody out there has found a way to incorporate AI into scheduling. There's got to be a way, right? There's got to be a way. And it's tough. I think it's going to be tough because there's so many human elements to scheduling. With what teachers enjoy teaching, what their specialists are in, that sort of thing. But I don't know. At some point in time, I think we can put all that into an AI tool, but I'm not there yet. If you are, if you have any ideas, please reach out to me, msheeman@bethanyparma.com. I would love to hear from you. But yeah, like Rob said, there's no magic wand. This is a personal thing, I guess, right? Personal to the schools, but then you are dealing with people and with their lives, with their sanity, with their boundaries in personal versus work time, with their capacity to be able to be effective in the classroom. So whatever it is that you do, I'm going to encourage you, spend some time, really reflect on what you can do. Think outside the box. Encourage your staff to think outside the box. Listen to them because this is a topic that, even though it seems like it's very small, I think the impact can be pretty significant.
Yeah. One more thing before we close. Mike and I are trying something new. Mike and I are going to host a kind of a monthly principal Zoom that's going to be topical. And so, kind of a half hour, maybe an hour, one night, 1 month. And it'll just be, hey, we're going to talk about this. If you want to talk about it and just pick somebody else's brain, we're happy to do that. So that will be coming out soon. We're really excited to offer this principal Zoom because being a principal can be pretty lonely. And sometimes you don't have anybody you can talk to or anybody you can bounce ideas off or anybody you can share something with that's not going to breach confidentiality. So this will be an opportunity for us to talk and meet and get some perspective and just get some things out on the table that you can ask other principals questions about. And so our first one is actually going to be in April, and it's going to be April 15th at 7 p.m. Central Time, so keep track of your time zone. We'll make sure to include a Zoom link in our podcast as we get closer. And if that's something you're interested in joining, we'd love to have you. You can always email me or Mike. I'll include our emails in the descriptions for this episode if you want to get in touch with us and ask us questions about that. It's something we'd love to do to help principals become better equipped and better prepared and better supported in their role. Well, Mike, I think we've covered just enough for scheduling. And as with anything else, we are now approaching the top of a new hour. So you want to close us with prayer?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Heavenly Father, thank you for all of the people that you have serving in Christian schools all around the world. People that have a passion and a love for you and a drive to share your love with kids and with their families and in their communities. Lord, I ask that you would continue to be faithful to your promise to provide for all of our needs through your riches in Christ. We rely on you to be able to guide and direct our schools, and there's so much work that needs to be done. And we only have so many hours in a day, and we tire. But you continue to give us energy, and I pray that you would be with those who serve, that you would give us what we need in order to have our buckets filled and help to fill the buckets of others. And be it prep time, be it resources, whatever it is, God, we come to you and ask that you would continue to bless the ministries that you lead in this place. Lord, be with all of the administrators who wrestle with this topic. Be with the teachers who deserve prep time, who need prep time, and yet struggle sometimes to have that. Continue to give us your strength and your wisdom, and allow us to continue to think forward, to be strong and be courageous, because the Lord our God is with us wherever we go. Bless all who lead and all who serve, God, as they consider this topic and all the others that are on their plate this day. We bring them before you in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of From the Principal's Desk. If you found it helpful, please share it with someone else that can help. If you found it entertaining, please leave a rating or a review. And if you want to hear more episodes like this, subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a good week.